Hi friends. Today we embark on another captivating journey into the shadowy world of true crime stories. Get ready to investigate, discover, and reveal the secrets of a dark and dramatic case. Are you prepared to dive into this thrilling investigation? Let's begin now. Remington Harlow, a successful software engineer, and his wife Cordelia, a talented interior designer, are considered a model of marital bliss in the eyes of their friends and neighbors. Their house, with its manicured lawn and white fence, is a testament to their seemingly perfect lives. However, beneath that surface, a dark current is stirring. Remington's growing fascination with a taboo fantasy will set off a chain of events that disrupt their existence and end in tragedy. What begins as a consensual exploration of desires quickly becomes a spiral of jealousy, betrayal, and, ultimately, murder. Remington was born in 1985 into a middle-class family in Eugene. From a young age, he showed a sharp intellect and a passion for computers. His parents, both educators, nurtured this interest in him. By high school, Remington was coding his own programs. Despite his excellent academic abilities, he often struggled socially, feeling awkward and out of place. Cordelia Astor was born in 1987 and grew up in a wealthy family in Seattle, Washington. As the youngest child in a family of 3 children, she showed vivacity and creativity from a young age. Her parents, successful real estate developers, enabled her to take art classes and interior design courses. Cordelia and Remington Harlow's paths crossed in 2005 at Reed College in Portland. Remington, a computer science student, ran into Cordelia, a first-year art student, in the library. He is attracted to her bright smile and charm, while Cordelia is attracted to Remington's quietness and creative mind. Their courtship took place through intellectual discussions and late-night coding sessions, where Cordelia sketched ideas and Remington typed. Together they explore Portland's diverse art scene. Even though they have different backgrounds and personalities, they find each other the perfect complement. They married in 2009, right after Cordelia's graduation. Their wedding was held at a beautiful vineyard in the Willamette Valley, signaling a bright future. Remington Harlow landed a high-paying job at a Portland tech startup, while Cordelia began making a name for herself in the city's competitive interior design market. During the first few years of married life, everything went smoothly. They bought their dream home in Oakey, traveled the world, and expanded their circle of friends. Remington advanced in his career, becoming a senior engineer, while Cordelia flourished, with her work published in many magazines. However, when entering the age of 30, subtle cracks begin to appear. As their 10th wedding anniversary approaches, a restlessness begins to creep into their relationship. The passion that once burned has now become boring. Remington, naturally introverted, became increasingly drawn to online forums about alternative sexual lifestyles. He became curious about the ways other couples spice up their love lives. As he dug deeper, he became fascinated by the concept of cuckolding, the idea of observing his wife with another man. At first, Remington kept these thoughts to himself, feeling embarrassed and confused. He stays up late consuming related content, while Cordelia, more perceptive, notices a change in her husband. she found him distracted and glassy-eyed during conversations. The increase in the amount of time he stayed up late worried her, and she gently asked if everything was okay. Finally, after weeks of internal struggle, Remington decided to talk to Cordelia about his newfound desires. One evening over a bottle of wine, he hesitantly confessed his curiosity about exploring a new fantasy, always watching her reaction. Contrary to what he feared, Cordelia did not object. She listened with an open mind and asked questions about what attracted him. Although somewhat reserved, she also acknowledged the appeal of being noticed by another man. This conversation marked a turning point in their marriage. What was once Remington's private fantasy is now exposed, opening up the possibility of mutual exploration. They realize that this will have a profound effect on their lives and begin to carefully establish rules and boundaries to take things slowly. Cordelia met Thaddeus Blackwood at a charity art auction in Portland. Thaddeus, with his impressive height and attractive blue eyes, quickly attracted everyone's attention. As the owner of a successful art gallery, he immersed himself in the city's elite culture. Cordelia is immediately attracted to Thaddeus's charm and intelligence, and they spend the evening chatting about art and interior design trends. Cordelia recounts her encounter with Thaddeus, and Remington's eyes light up as she describes him. They agree that Thaddeus could be the perfect candidate for their new experiences. Remington encouraged Cordelia to develop this connection, and over the next few weeks she met Thaddeus several times for coffee, ostensibly to discuss a collaboration between his gallery and the design firm. Every time she returns home, Cordelia tells Remington about her encounters, igniting the fire of his imagination. Finally, after a flirtatious encounter, Cordelia decides to broach the subject of cuckoldry. Thaddeus, surprised and amused, admitted to having been involved in similar arrangements before and understood the delicacy required. With the consent of all three, everything was prepared for the new adventure. On the night of their first meeting, Remington and Cordelia were filled with nervous energy and anticipation. They spent a week planning every detail, from the lighting in the bedroom to the chilled bottle of expensive champagne. At 8 p.m., Thaddeus appeared in a tailored charcoal suit, carrying a bouquet of flowers for Cordelia and a rare bottle of scotch for Remington. The evening begins with drinks and light conversation in the living room. Thaddeus shares stories from the world of art, and his charisma is evident. Cordelia, dressed in a shiny black dress, laughed at Thaddeus's stories and touched his arm more and more. Remington sat in the armchair, his heart pounding with each interaction between his wife and their guest. As night falls and the alcohol begins to take hold, the atmosphere becomes sexually tense. Finally, Cordelia took Thaddeus's hand and led him upstairs. In the bedroom, Remington sat in a corner, witnessing Cordelia and Thaddeus kissing passionately. They both fell onto the bed, their bodies entwined tightly together, and Remington watched intensely as his fantasy played out before his eyes. After everyone lay down to rest, Remington felt a whirlwind of complicated emotions. He was pleased that his long-held fantasy had come true, but he also had an uneasy feeling that things had changed. Thaddeus leaves with a promise to keep in touch, and Remington and Cordelia lie in bed, discussing the evening's events with excitement. They could not have imagined that this first meeting would set the stage for the tragedies to come. Encouraged by the success of their first attempt, they eagerly arranged more meetings with Thaddeus. What started as meetings became weekly, and each time pushed the boundaries further. The relationship between the three people becomes increasingly intense and intimate. Cordelia shared that at first Remington was content to watch from afar, but then he gradually got caught up in the action and sometimes joined in the game. The power dynamics and control in Remington and Cordelia's bedroom become increasingly complex. In addition to these meetings, Thaddeus begins to integrate more into their lives. He joined them for dinner, went to art exhibitions with Cordelia, and even spent weekends at their house. Thaddeus's charm and wit make him an interesting companion, and the two enjoy his company even without a plan of action. As spring turned to summer, Remington's initial excitement began to give way to a feeling of unease. He noticed small but significant changes in Cordelia's behavior. She seemed distracted during their time together, and her mind was often elsewhere. She also started dressing more formally even when she had no plans to meet Thaddeus. One evening, Remington came home early and found Cordelia talking on the phone in a friendly whisper. When she saw him, she quickly ended the call, claiming it was just a customer. However, Remington could not shake the feeling that she had spoken to Thaddeus. Cordelia's passion seems to have cooled. Although she remains enthusiastic when meeting Thaddeus, when around Remington she often seems tired or uninterested. Remington found himself initiating sex more often, but was often gently rejected. Remington tried to reassert control over the situation, suggesting that their agreement be put on hold and perhaps take a vacation, just the two of them. But Cordelia did not agree. Remington feels increasingly helpless and afraid of losing Cordelia. These worries made him determined to end the situation he had created. The breaking point came on a warm July evening. Remington plans a romantic dinner at home, hoping to reconnect with Cordelia and discuss his concerns. He left work early to buy her favorite wine and spent hours preparing elaborate meals. But when the sun set and the candles went out, Cordelia still did not appear. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and the dishes were cold. Finally, Cordelia walked in just before midnight, her hair disheveled and her lipstick smeared. Remington's worst fears seemed to have been confirmed. The argument exploded as he released all his fears and doubts. He accused Cordelia of loving Thaddeus and cheating on him to destroy their marriage. Initially, Cordelia tried to justify that she was attending a meeting with a client and her phone was dead. But under Remington's questioning and evidence of her appearance, she finally admitted that she had been with Thaddeus. The confession hit Remington like a physical blow. Even though he had doubts and fears, when he heard it confirmed, the broken feeling inside him became clear. All the excitement of their arrangement disappeared. Cordelia, tears streaming down her face, tried to explain that she still loved Remington and that Thaddeus just made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. She is confused and torn between her loyalty to her husband and her feelings for Thaddeus. Remington, in a deep and dangerous voice, demanded that she end everything immediately. Cordelia, her anger rising, refuses this. She argued that the idea was originally Remington's and that he could not manipulate her emotions or control her relationships. The argument escalates when both say hurtful things that they later regret. In anger, Remington smashed the wine glass against the wall. Cordelia, shocked by this unusual act of violence, retreated to the guest bedroom and locked the door behind her. Remington spent the night on the couch, his mind racing and unable to sleep. The days following the confrontation with Cordelia were filled with chilling silence. They moved around each other like ghosts, barely saying a word. Cordelia spends most of her time out working, while Remington indulges in paranoid thoughts. He scoured her computer and phone for evidence of her relationship, recording every text, call, and unexplained absence. Remington begins to fantasize about confronting Thaddeus, forcing him to pay for destroying his marriage. At first, these were just harmless dreams to vent frustrations. But as time passes and Cordelia becomes more distant, these fantasies become dark and violent. One afternoon, while Cordelia attended a meeting with a client, Remington picked up a heavy wrench in the garage and thought about eliminating the threat to his marriage once and for all. Horrified by this thought, Remington dropped the wrench and ran out of the garage. However, the seed of the idea had been sown. As he paced the house and drank whiskey, the idea grew in his mind. As night fell, what had begun as a terrifying thought crystallized into a plan. August 15th was bright, hot, and humid, and the air was heavy, signaling an approaching storm. Remington woke up early, dizzy after a night of drunkenness. Today, his determination is to confront and regain control of his life and marriage. He spent the whole morning getting ready, showering, shaving, and dressing carefully, as if preparing for an important job. Instead of a violent confrontation in the garage, he chose the wrench he had been holding a few days earlier, wrapped it in a towel, and placed it in an indistinguishable gym bag. Cordelia left for work around 9 a.m., barely acknowledging Remington as she rushed out the door. As soon as she left, Remington got in his car and drove to Thaddeus' showroom. He parked across the street, watched Thaddeus arrive, and greeted his employees with characteristic charm. For hours, Remington sat in his car, waiting for closing time. When it was closing time, Remington headed to the showroom. Thaddeus was saying goodbye to his last customer and preparing to lock the door. This was the moment Remington had been waiting for. With shaking hands, he picked up his gym bag and crossed the street. When Remington approached, Thaddeus was surprised but quickly changed to a wary smile. Thaddeus's calm tone caused Remington's rage to surge, as if he had never destroyed Remington's life. Without thinking much, Remington swung the gym bag, causing Thaddeus to stumble. The scene of violence is blurry and desperate. Remington pulled out his wrench and swung it wildly in anger. When it was all over, he stood panting over Thaddeus's body, a bloody wrench in his hand. Realizing his actions, a feeling of guilt came over him. He killed a man and ruined his own life. Remington tried to cover his tracks. He dragged Thaddeus' body into the alley behind the gallery and hid it behind a trash can. Then he wipes down the doorknob and every touched surface. In a state of shock, he drove home, heavy with the weight of the action. When the storm broke, the rain washed away the blood on his hands but could not clear his conscience. The hours after the murder passed in a nightmare for Remington. He staggered into the house and emptied the contents of his stomach out. Adrenaline erases the impact of his actions, making him realize he is a murderer. In a state of panic, Remington began destroying evidence. He burned his clothes in the backyard fire pit, scrubbed the car, and took a shower. When Cordelia came home, Remington had calmed down enough to act normal. He greeted her with forced cheerfulness, offering to order food and watch a movie. While sitting on the sofa, his mind raced with thoughts again. He knew it was only a matter of time before Thaddeus's body was discovered, so he needed an alibi to tell a story when questions arose. Remington told Cordelia that he had been at home working and gardening all day, even showing her a small cut on his hand, claiming it was from pruning roses. The cut actually came from the fight with Thaddeus. 2 days later, news broke that Thaddeus Blackwood, a famous art dealer, had been murdered. Remington learned this information when he heard colleagues talking about the incident. He felt blood running down his face and his hands shaking. The investigation was quickly opened under the direction of Detective Ilana Rossi. She and her team dug into Thaddeus's life, interviewing family, friends, and business associates. They quickly discover Thaddeus' relationship with Cordelia. Cordelia is devastated by the news of Thaddeus's death. She initially tried to downplay their connection, but eventually admitted it when confronted with evidence from phone records and witness statements. When police arrived to interview Remington, he was prepared. Cordelia expressed shock and sadness at Thaddeus's death. She admits that although their relationship is dysfunctional, Thaddeus is still a friend. In an interview with police, Remington calmly recounted his actions on the day of the murder. "Your story matches exactly what you told Detective Cordelia Rossi." Cordelia senses something is wrong with Remington's attitude. His calmness cast doubt on his grief. She decided to learn more about his actions as the investigation progressed. Police began analyzing security footage from nearby businesses, which showed Remington entering the showroom in the morning but not leaving. His last call was to Cordelia, which ended abruptly around closing time. The web is slowly tightening around Remington as time passes. Cordelia's grief over Thaddeus's death deepens. She threw herself into work, often staying late at the office to avoid the silence of her family life with Remington. Initially, Remington's concern after the tragedy touched her. He seemed genuinely worried about her health and was always ready with words of comfort. But over time, Cordelia began to notice inconsistencies in his behavior. She recalls Remington's jealousy and his desperate pleas for her to end her affair with Thaddeus. These thoughts made her doubts deepen. Cordelia paid more attention to Remington's actions. She notices when he leaves the house and checks his browser history when he's not around. She even considered hiring a private investigator but couldn't do it because she was afraid. Her doubts grew, making her worry about the possibility that Remington might do something bad. For the first time in their marriage, Cordelia feels afraid of her husband and unsure of the man she promised to love through good times and bad. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source, a homeless man who frequented the alley behind Thaddeus' gallery. This person claimed to have seen a man matching Remington's description carrying a gym bag on the night of the murder. This clue energized Detective Rossi and her team, causing them to begin scrutinizing Remington's movements. They discovered traffic camera footage that contradicted his alibi, showing his car near the showroom at the time of the incident. As evidence showed that Remington's behavior became increasingly suspicious, he began drinking heavily, berating his colleagues, and becoming paranoid about being followed. Cordelia's suspicions seemed to be confirmed. She began to stay away from Remington. The reason he gave was that he needed space to grieve Thaddeus's death. The puzzle took shape when police obtained a search warrant and found small traces of blood in Remington's car, matching Thaddeus' DNA. They also discovered the crime weapon, a bloody wrench that Remington had hidden in the attic. On a rainy September morning, nearly a month after the murder, Detective Rossi and a group of officers arrived at Remington's residence. They found him sitting in the living room with half a bottle of whiskey by his side. When the detective read him his rights, Remington did not resist, feeling a strange sense of relief. The game is over and it can all stop. Remington's trial was brief but sensational. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder, his confession a rambling tale of jealous fantasies and deadly obsessions. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Cordelia is shattered by the revelation of her husband's actions. Immediately after his arrest, she filed for divorce, sold their house because she couldn't live with the memories she had kept, and left the state to start a new life. Please ensure to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell to stay updated on all the intriguing cases in the True Crime Stories series. Be the first to receive updates on dramatic and thrilling crime stories.